Welcome back. This is the third video for the second lesson in Module 3. In the previous two videos, we looked at solving some quadratic equation word problems that were in a single variable. Okay, and in these next exercises, we're going to have the same kind of situation where each one of these equations here, you'll notice, only has one x variable that we have to worry about. Okay, now there's different ways you can solve these, but we're going to solve them using that kind of shorter way that I showed you right here in the previous video. So in this situation, right, how do we solve this? Well, you could, for example, factor out a GCF. So there's a couple of ways you can do it here, right? So for example, I see a GCF, right? Our quadratic here is already equal to 0, so we can try and use a zero product property. We could factor out a 3, which will leave x squared minus 3 here. Okay, but then trying to factor this, that 3 is not a perfect square, right? So maybe we don't want to go this way. What else could we do, though? Well, let's add 9 to both sides and try and just get this x by itself, the way we kind of normally would solve a quadratic equation, or any equation, really. Most equations. Divide both sides by 3, and we end up with x squared equals 3. How should we go from here? Well, square root, right? So we square root both sides, we get x equals plus or minus the square root of 3. Okay, we can't simplify that square root of 3 anymore. 3 does not, break down any more easily than it already is. So we just leave it, and those are our two answers. Okay, there's also no context here, so we accept both the positive and negative version because they both make sense in the context of the problem. All right, next, number 2 here. We've got another quadratic equation, but in this case, right, it's not equal to 0, it's equal to 1. So we won't be able to utilize the zero product property here, which is unfortunate because it's already factored for us. So what do we do now? Well, so again, we have two options I can see, off the top of my head, right? So option 1 is we could go ahead and just square root both sides, which leaves us with x minus 3 here and plus or minus 1 here, because the square root of 1 is just plus or minus 1. And then just add 3 to both sides. So we have x equals 3 plus or minus 1, which means x equals 4, that's 3 plus 1, or x equals 2, and that's 3 minus 1. So those are our two options there. Sorry, two answers. The other option we could use here is if you really do want to try and factor this using the zero product property like we were showing you earlier in a previous lesson, I should say, you would have to multiply this out, subtract the 1 over, then refactor and solve for x. So let's just show you that real quick here. So x minus 3 squared is x minus 3 times x minus 3. Multiply this all out, so x times x times minus 3 times x, minus 3 times minus 3, so we'll get x squared minus 6x plus 9 when you combine everything together. Subtract the 1 over, so I have x squared minus 6x plus 8 equals 0. We need two numbers that multiply to make 8 and add to make negative 6. Okay, we don't have to use the AC method here because that lead coefficient is just a 1. So two numbers that multiply to 8 add to negative 6. And that's going to be negative 4 and negative 2. Set each of these equal to 0. So you have x minus 4 equals 0, x minus 2 equals 0, and you see that we get x equals 4 and x equals 2, which is exactly what we had over there. So it's really your choice, right? You can kind of make it work here. I think this problem is better designed for the first way that we solved here, but you can, use this if you really want to. Okay? So go ahead and pause the video, try 3 and 4 on your own here before you watch me do it. Okay, so hopefully you pause the video. For these two, I'm not going to do this other method where it gets multiplied all out and then factored. I'm going to use this first method here where we just kind of, isolated things and, solve for x. So in this case here, we don't want to square root right off the bat. We want to get rid of this 4. So we'll divide both sides by 4 first. And so we get 1/4 here. And now to get rid of the square, we will square root both sides. You could square root in the first step here. You would also need to take the square root of 4, though, when you do that. Okay, so when you square root in an equation, you square root the entire left-hand side, the entire right-hand side. You can't pick and choose. So that 4 would also be, you take the square root of that, too. Anyway, square root of 1/4, well, you remember that's the square root of 1 over the square root of 4, which is just 1 over 2, 1/2. And again, it's plus or minus 1/2. Oops. Okay, and then we'll add the 3 over. 3 plus or minus 1/2. So in other words, x equals 7/2, or x equals 5/2 are our two answers there. Okay, and then finally for number 4, divide both sides by 2. Okay, square root both sides. So it's plus or minus the square root of 6, and then add 3 to both sides. And there's our answer. Okay, in the next video, we'll take a look at these word problems here, and then we'll also take a look at the lesson summary. Thanks, guys. We'll talk to you later.